Welcome on to the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. My name is Brad Nadauld. We've got the coach Lindsey Parry with us once again. And today we are talking all things hormones. It's something we haven't actually spoken about too much here on the podcast. Your hormones have a massive impact on your performance, your recovery, your sleep, pretty much everything that's related to your running and your running performance. And we've got a very special guest joining us today as well. I'll do a brief introduction in just a moment. But first, Lindsey, nice to catch up. How things going? Training towards Berlin, looking good?
Yeah, so far so good. We're still right at the death throes of winter moving into the spring, but so I'm being a little bit lazy and trying to train when the sun is shining. But the good news is the training's going well.
Yeah, I don't know if I told you this, but it's about 6 weeks post Comrades now. So I took a bit of time off after Comrades, but I ran a half marathon last weekend, just with my wife, just to sort of see how much fitness we've actually lost. And surprisingly enough, I haven't lost too much, but it was a bit of a shock to the system running 21 Ks after an ultra again. But I don't think I've told you this either. I was walking around my dining room day before yesterday, carrying my Mac, and I had my credit card in my hand, and I slipped and fell. And I fell onto my Mac, and when I got up, I realized I'd entered the Cape Town Marathon. So we also have a marathon that is on the cards for October. So I better start training, otherwise it's going to be very, very messy. So both of us training for a marathon later on this year, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. Keeps us out of mischief and keeps us walking the walk, as they say.
I better focus more on my mobility, because we know lack of mobility causes falls, and see what happens when I fall, Lindsey. I end up entering marathons, which is really not good. It's good for me, not so good for my wife. She's not too, and mind you, she's entered as well. So she didn't realize it, but I entered her at the same time.
That's when you tried to stand up and fell with your face on the keyboard, is it? Yes, okay, I've got
Exactly.
you.
So we both running Cape Town Marathon, which is great. All right, time to get into our guest today, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome her onto the podcast. She's a leading sports endocrinologist with a specialist interest in complex relations between hormones, health, and human performance, particularly in active aging populations. With a background in both clinical medicine and academic research, she combines science and experience to help athletes, from dancers right through to cyclists and runners, understand how hormonal health underpins performance, recovery, and long-term well-being. She's also the author of Hormones, Health, and Human Potential, a guide to understanding your hormones to optimize your health and performance, and works closely with masters athletes, recreational exercises, and clinicians to educate around topics like energy availability, bone health, red S, and healthy aging. In addition to the clinical work, she's a medical advisor for Forth. Forth is a UK-based health platform that provides at-home blood testing kits. She sits on editorial boards and is involved in developing female athlete health strategies for several sporting bodies. Her work empowers athletes, especially women and older athletes, to make informed, sustainable choices about training, recovery, and health. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome Dr. Nicky Keay onto the podcast. Nicky, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to having a good discussion.
Nicky, I'm super excited to talk about this. It is something we chat about every now and again on the podcast, but we haven't dug too deep into it. But I'm keen to find out sort of where your interest in this came in endocrinology. Tell us a little bit about sort of your background and how you ended up where you are in the medical field with this speciality.
So as a youngster, a teenager, I was very keen on all things to do with sport, competitive swimmer, playing tennis. I was also doing a lot of ballet, still do. And I wanted to know how I could perform to my personal best. And also I wanted to understand how the training was following through to make me hopefully fitter and better and compete better. And so that's really why I wanted to study medicine in the first place, sort of thing, to see understand what's going on in the body for people who are doing sport exercise. And then as I started on that journey, it dawned on me that what I really needed to focus on specifically in the medical field was hormones, endocrinology, because I came to realize that those are the key. Those are the things that drive our adaptations to our training. So that's why I wanted to get into the nitty-gritty and understand exactly what we can do, our choices as athletes around nutrition, recovery, the training schedule that you mentioned. What is it that we can do to really harness our hormones to drive these positive adaptations we're all seeking throughout our life. And that's the other thing. Throughout our life, obviously, I started off this journey as a teenager, but now being certainly in that master's category, I realize also not only are we talking about hormones are important, but actually they change. We have to be respectful that our hormones change, during our life course. And so actually, if you're like in your 60s, you can't train like you used to when you were 21 and expect to get the same results. It's just not going to happen because your hormones have changed, and the hormones are the key to your performance.
Yeah, Nicky, it's interesting you say that, because I think that applies to so many different parts of running when it comes to training and recovery. We can get away with a lot of things when we're in our 20s and 30s, but as we get older, it becomes more and more difficult to sort of to escape the sort of ramifications of not doing things properly. And you've worked with tons of masters athletes. What are some of the challenges, particularly for males and females, when it comes to hormones as we hit our 50s, 60s and beyond?
So the main hormones that change and decline for men and women, one of the top ones are the anabolic hormones, the hormones that build muscle, build bone. And one of the top ones is actually a thing called growth hormone. So growth hormone, you might think, oh, wasn't that just for children growing? It's like, no. I mean, obviously, that's when it's at its highest. But throughout our adult life, we still continue to produce some growth hormone, which maintains a good body composition. Okay. And actually, many years ago, I was part of an international medical team, and we were developing an anti-doping test with growth hormone because some unscrupulous athletes know that this could be a shortcut. Anyway, but you get my point, that our levels as we get older, they would gradually decline. So that's one of for men and women. For women in particular, of course, we're talking about a big sea change in hormones. We're talking about the menopause. So estradiol, the most active form of estrogen, what women produce, men produce some as well, by the way. You have to convert some of your testosterone to estrogen. But anyway, for women, this one of these other key anabolic hormones that really takes a nosedive, as women experience menopause at the average age of 51. For men, there's a slight decline in testosterone, another powerful anabolic hormone. Slight, but still a decline. So that's the challenge that we faced. I mean, I really want to emphasize we shouldn't be negative about this. And, oh gosh, I'm getting older. It's like, look, put that aside. It happens to all of us. This is natural physiology. Your hormones change. So what you have to do, like I said, is number one, understand that, appreciate that, and, work with that. And so this is why training, like if you're 60 and you're trying to train like you used to when you're 21, it's just not going to happen. And actually it could backfire. It could actually hinder your performance. This is all doable and manageable, because then you can look at what are your training behaviors around the training, around the nutrition and sleep, and modify them. So we're talking about modifications rather than totally starting afresh. It's just just reviewing what you're doing and making sure you're training really smart and correctly for your personal hormone profile at that time in your life.
Awesome. Lindsey, any question? You got a question for Nicky?
Yeah, I do actually. So yeah, again, thanks for coming on. Like I often talk about hormones, but this is like one of those topics where I'm just so acutely aware of my tiny pinprick of understanding is only the very beginnings. So look, as we get older, that's part of what we preach at Coach Parry. Things are changing. Some of those things you can do something about and decelerate those changes, and then coupled with modifying behavior. Because I think, and I guess this is the question, is that if we ignore the fact that our hormone profile is changing, do we compromise or accelerate that hormonal change? So in other words, I'm used to running 100-mile weeks. So that's what I need to do to run under 3 hours for a marathon. So that's what I'm going to carry on doing. And then the flip side of that question is, are there things that we can do both from a dietary, perhaps supplementary, but most importantly from a modification of behavior that will decelerate that change, in particular of the growth hormone?
Yes, well, I mean, it's absolutely, you can do things to support your hormones that are declining, because they still fundamentally respond to the same things. So, for example, growth hormone, the two main stimuli for growth hormone release, regardless of your age, is doing exercise. So that's obviously a good start, and sleep. So thinking particularly about the training side of it, and obviously this is more your department as a coach, but from my medical point of view, hormone point of view, I can say that what absolutely benefits and supports the production of anabolic hormones is quality of training over quantity. So I know that this is a challenge, especially if you were talking about ultra marathons and all sorts of things, marathons. Of course, you need to put in the training hours, but actually, you need to make sure when you are training, it's absolute quality. It's not just those gray miles, And so it's been shown that, interval training, I suppose you would call it, is really, really beneficial for growth hormone. And the big one is strength training, guys. I mean, all of us, even from when we were young and in the 20s, whatever, we should frankly be doing strength training. But again, I know what it's like. I've been there, done that. When you're young, you think, I don't need to do that strength training. So I just want to do what the thing is I'm doing, whether it's the running, whether it's in my case the ballet class, whatever it is. Just want to do the thing I want to do. This strength training seems a bit peripheral to me, but so I understand that sentiment. But actually, one of the key stimuli for growth hormone is the strength training, all right? Because it's very intense. Strength training engages all the muscle groups. That's really the key thing. So it will help the production or maintain that production of growth hormone, provides a great anabolic stimulus, the strength training. So to the masters athletes I work with, I say, please go and discuss with your coach and make sure, ideally, we're aiming for 3 strength sessions a week, ideally. Okay, that's really the key thing. So strength training and the quality of the training, but that's got to be matched with sufficient recovery. Because remember, the 2 stimuli for growth hormone release are the exercise, the training, the strength training in particular, but also the recovery, because you need to give the hormones a chance. When are they going to drive those positive adaptations? It's actually when you're asleep, you get fitter. So sleep, absolutely, really need to prioritize that. Good quality sleep, going to bed at a reasonable early hour, because the peak production of growth hormones about midnight. So go to bed after midnight, you missed it, missed the boat, right? Yeah. And the other thing is recovery. I mean, at least, hopefully, all athletes are taking at least 1 total rest day per week. But you're not being weak and feeble as a masters athlete if you might need more, because you need more time for the hormones to work their magic for you. And by the way, I'm renaming, because some people, some athletes, I have to be honest, including myself, rest day sounds a bit negative to me. Sounds like laziness, but actually I'm renaming it positive adaptation a day. So when you are doing a rest day, maybe you're doing a little bit of stretching, just something, gentle mobilization, fine. You can do that. I'm not saying you have to be glued to your seat or your bed. You absolutely should not be. You can do some balance work, etc. But this is a really positive day. This is a day when you're saying, great, my growth hormone, I've given it a nice stimulus, and now it's doing its thing. So I think those are the key elements specifically of the training: quality over quantity, strength training, and matched. Part of this training schedule should be probably increased positive adaptation days for masters athletes, I suggest.
I absolutely love that. What a great name for it, Linz. I think we need to incorporate that with what we do at Coach Parry.
100%. And I think you'll be super pleased to know that our mantra at Coach Parry is 3 days of strength is ideal, 2 is better than 1, and 1 is better than none. So that's kind
exactly.
of how we drive it home. Look, the sleep one, I love that. And we all know how important it is. And that's another thing that we constantly are talking about on these type of pods. Of course, the practice is not always as easy as the recommendation, and females in particular, but just people generally as they get older, sleep does get more complicated. But to your point, you've got to work at it, you've got to prioritize it, and you've got to get the best that you can with your limitations. So
on that sleep thing, again, I appreciate people are going to turn around and say, oh, but, I need to catch up with a last minute email and things like this. And it's true, especially for women, perimenopause, menopause, that's one of the things is it can disrupt sleep because the hormones are changing. But the thing is, it's just being aware of that and not getting frustrated and saying, okay, it's like the training. Okay, my hormones are changing, so I need to step up and modify my training and the strength training, etc. But same for the sleep. It's like, okay, you're busy and your hormones are changing, might be more challenging, but it's just going back to those fundamentals, the sleep hygiene strategies. It's like my top tips are, which my husband played an interesting trick on me, because I have to say that, I am one to look at emails and do things late at night. Oh, I just need to finish this off. Anyway, then the alarm went on my phone. It's like, what the heck's that? And he'd set an alarm at 9 p.m. to say, don't look at your computer anymore and start winding down for bed. So actually setting an alarm for wind down for bedtime. It's like, okay, fine, now I'm going to not look at my computer anymore because it stimulates the brain, and also the light emitted from electronic stuff interferes with the production of the sleep hormone melatonin. So having a regular bedtime, ideally, and definitely way before midnight, which is what my grandmother used to say, which funnily enough, and at the time when you're young, you think, old woman's, folk tale, whatever, but it's true. And then the paper comes out a couple of years ago saying, actually, guess what? Yes, it's the hours before midnight, which are actually so precious, because of that's when it's the peak production of these anabolic hormones we're trying to support, and you see. So set bedtime. What's your wind down routine? Everyone will be individual. Whether it's listening to music, reading a book, I don't know, whatever it is, find out what works for you. That's really the key thing. And another top tip for masters athletes is having some protein before you go to bed. Studies show that's really helpful. So to, give some building blocks for those anabolic hormones to repair the muscles. And so, this can take any form. I mean, again, an old-fashioned thing, a sort of a milky drink at bedtime. And milk is great because it's got casein, a particular type of protein in it for muscles. And also it's got a thing called tryptophan, which is the precursor for making the sleep hormone melatonin. So there are definitely things that you can do in a positive way and feel, okay, fine, I'm doing everything I can to try and nail this sleep and get good quality sleep.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, such great advice there, Nicky. Obviously, a lot of what you're talking about is what we preach at Coach Parry. So it's really nice to hear it coming from someone else as well. But as we get older, obviously things do change, and there's a normal age-related changes that come. As you say, it is perfectly normal for it to happen. But how do you tell the difference between something that's normal aging and obviously the changes in your hormonal profile to something that becomes serious, that you need to get checked out, where there are some serious hormonal imbalances?
Well, for example, especially in women, the thyroid gland, which controls the metabolic rate, we're more prone to get autoimmune conditions. And so autoimmune is called Hashimoto's anyway, but the long and short of it is the thyroid sort of doesn't work so well. And so you're not producing so much of these thyroid hormones, which control metabolic rate. And so, and it is a challenging one, because women who are going through perimenopause, menopause, you do feel a little bit more sluggish. You might feel like your body shape is changing, putting on weight, visceral fat around the waist, all these sorts of things. And these symptoms really overlap with an underactive thyroid, okay? So if you're really experiencing this, men as well, but you're doing everything that we are suggesting and recommending and that you're advising your athletes to do. They're doing everything. They're doing the strength training. They're doing the sleep. That all these sorts of things. They're increasing their protein intake, by the way, is another important point, right? They're doing everything, but still, it's just not. They're not seeing, the results or effects of that. Then this might be a situation where I would recommend an athlete goes and gets their thyroid checked out, because we know as we get older that, so it might be a medical condition underlying that. Not a super common, but worth checking out if you're really you're doing everything that we're suggesting, but it's just doesn't seem to be bearing fruit. The other thing that actually is always worth checking out, everyone listening to this should be taking vitamin D supplementation, because yes, everyone's nodding their heads, but that's such another common thing. I found that, athletes are saying, look, I'm doing everything you're saying. Their thyroid is their thyroid function is fine, so it's not that. And then their vitamin D is in their boots. It's like, oh, yes, I was taking vitamin D and then I kind of forgot, or I don't know, something happened, right? So that also can be a possibility. And if you're an athlete that is following a vegetarian diet, again, you should be taking vitamin B12 supplements. So a blood test might show some deficiencies in B12, which makes you feel tired. Also iron, of course, so there are some possible correctable things to look out for if following all the advice that you're giving your athletes, etc. It's like you're not expecting the results you would expect. Being within realistic goals. I say to people who are 60, of course, we would all like to be 21 again, but, it's not going to happen. But realistically, are you able to do the things you mentioned, doing your marathons and things like this? Are you able to do the things that you want to do? But if you're just not, achieving what you feel you should, given all the input you're putting into this, then this could be a situation where getting a blood test just to tick off that there's nothing correctable or medical underlying it that could be addressed.
Yeah, so I'd love to touch on the blood test because that's something that I've worked with across the spectrum. So when I was much more involved with younger athletes and chasing qualifying for Olympic Games, and now having moved into this sort of 45 to 80 year age group. And firstly, when I was working with the younger athletes, we've got these norms. Okay? If you are normal, so if you are a really high performing athlete, that's the first part of the question is it okay to just be normal? So if you are low end of normal, is that really fine? And then similarly, these norms don't seem to change with age recommendations of where we should be. So how do we read that information? Look, I pretty much try never to do this without a fitness professional, but or a medical professional. But what I find, very few people in South Africa are in your situation where you specialize in exercise endocrinology.
Yeah.
We don't have that. We just have the GP that says, oh, don't worry, everything is low normal, so you're fine. But is that really fine? I guess that's the question.
Yeah. No, well, you make a very good point. Normal in the statistical sense means a normal distribution. There's a Gaussian curve. There will be, which encompasses 95% of the population, right? And some of those can be actually quite low readings and even quite high readings. And so obviously, where's the optimal range for an athlete? Especially with regard to age. So you make a very important point here. The ideal situation, really, each of us has our own personal optimal level, right? But there are some general rules or guidance I can say. So, for example, I agree with you that some of these normal ranges, in inverted commas, aren't really helpful for an athlete. Vitamin D, I'm talking about certainly in the UK. In the UK, the so-called normal range goes from like 50 nanomoles per litre up to, maybe 180 nanomoles per litre. And so sometimes people come back with a result of, oh, you're 52 nanomoles per litre, you're fine. That's not correct, because we know there is evidence that athletes need it to be around about 100 to get the benefits of vitamin D for bone health, muscle recovery from eccentric loading, immunity. So I do agree with you that sometimes you have to look a little bit critically at that with the athlete in mind. But there's a lot of variation between individuals. In the ideal world, you would have been a younger athlete. You would have had a blood test. You know what's the range for you. And then you could track it. We expect that maybe some things will start to go down. Not that I would recommend in any way, shape or form measuring IGF-1, by the way, that's the active form of growth hormone. But for example, testosterone in men, you would expect that to be, there is actually slight shift in the range, in the normal range presented. So knowing what is the right level for you, and this is where it does become really, really complicated. It would be lovely if you did have your own sequential blood test so you can see. But you're also right. It's a bit clunky, the reference ranges, like I've said, for vitamin D. They're not athlete specific. So for thyroid, for example, we know that there is a change as we get older. You won't get an underactive thyroid necessarily, but you're one of the drivers for thyroid hormone production, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. We know the range goes up a little bit, but it's not reflected. It's not age matched when you see the result. So this is exactly what you're saying, where this is what I love about it, my job. I love those details and the nitty gritty of what's the person, how old are they? I can sort of look at that and sort of put it all together as a jigsaw. And there are some instances, frankly, where, I love my hormone test, but there's some where actually it's not helpful. For example, perimenopausal women, we're advised that it's not, the reason why it's not helpful to do a blood test for a perimenopausal woman to look at her estrogen and stuff like this is because perimenopause, during that time, the hormones are all over the shop. There will be some cycles where it's great, everything's fine. Others when it's like the ovaries are saying, no, I'm not working today, part-time. So it can be really confusing. So I think the key message I'm trying to say, I'm agreeing with you that it can be very subtle. Is this an athlete range? Which is one of the challenges we came across when we were doing this development of the growth hormone doping thing. Is this a normal? Is this an athlete range, or are we just dealing with sedentary population? So we can never absolutely say that answer, but what we can say is that ideally, if you have got some previous blood tests, it'd be interesting to see your personal, where do you sit in that? And there are definitely some where we can definitely say, like the vitamin D story, the B12 story, the iron story, those are pretty much, those are valid ranges, if I can put it like that, even for athletes, So there are some things that are really helpful and sort of set in stone, but there are others where there's a little bit more subtlety involved, you're right. And also the ultimate thing is we can do this blood test, but really it's also how do you feel as an athlete? How are you doing, right? If the person says, you know what, I feel great, and this is their level that they tend to run of whatever, then it's like, that's probably good enough for you. So absolutely, I use my blood test to support, but it almost must be matched with how's the person feeling, what are they doing, and making it personal for them.
Yeah, Nicky, you bring up such an important point there, because as runners, and this is across the board, and it's not just runners, because I know other athletes do the same, is we're not honest with ourselves with how are we feeling, particularly as we getting older, because we have this line in the sand that we feel that we need to defend. We don't want to lose performance. We just don't want to admit the fact that we are getting slightly older and things are changing. And by fighting that line and not being honest with ourselves, we end up pushing ourselves in a hole. And I think that leads really nicely into where I wanted to go next with this was the looking at the sort of hormonal disruption as we age, and the link between that and things like low energy availability and red S, and by ignoring that, how we end up at these places. If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury-free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yeah, that's
Just before you jump in there, I just want to quickly make a really important point, because that's just such an important take-home message, is that with whether it's blood tests, whether it's heart rate, whether it's HRV, all these things are only useful with context. And what's very important, and that's one of the things you said a couple of times, and I just don't want listeners to miss that, is that the sooner you start, so if you're going to use this information, whatever information is you're going to use, the sooner you start and the sooner you start gathering data so that you compare good times and bad times, the more useful that information becomes to you. Sorry to cut in there, but I just really want to, and I think, we have a lot of listeners that are listening with a parent or whatever. So while we're focusing on the 45 and above, start this stuff. The sooner you start this stuff, the better. That's the message.
Absolutely, because it's a monitoring process, because hormones fluctuate anyway by their nature. And so just doing a snapshot one blood test, it's okay, but it's not going to give you that full information. So, collating your data, the trading data, we all already automatically do that. So collecting any data you can, but absolutely putting in the context. And HRV is a very good example because, actually HRV shows you that heart rate variability, but there are lots of things that affect heart rate variability. For example, it could be that you've got really high training load and so your HRV drops. It could be because you're ill, viral infection. It could be because you've had a bad night's sleep. It could be because you've had a stressful time and a big argument with somebody and then, something's happened, right? So there are so many factors contributing to that. So as you say, context. And so the data you're collecting, putting that in a nice, wherever you're plotting this and matching that with how you're feeling and what's happening in your training schedule and in your life, by the way. Don't forget we have there's life and part outside running. Yeah. You do have a life, right? Putting that all together and making it your personal record of what's going on, and then to get to know your body better. So thank you for that. And then going back to the REDS question, relative energy deficiency in sport, I see that a lot. So if people aren't familiar with REDS, relative energy deficiency in sport, as the name kind of suggests, it's relative energy deficiency. So you might be eating a reasonable amount, but compared to your energy demand from your training, actually you're in a deficit. That is essentially what it means. And the reason, and people might think, oh, well, surely that's just a thing that happens to elite athletes in their 20s and 30s. No, it's not. I'm seeing it more and more in masters athletes because we are very determined, are we not? And we want to continue performing, pushing ourselves. We feel frustrated maybe that we're not aware that our hormones are changing and that what we're doing when we were 21 is not working. So we're frustrated. We're like, hold on a minute. Why have I put on some weight? Where's this body fat come from? Why am I feeling a bit sluggish? And So the kind of instinct as someone with a little bit of competitiveness in them, it's like, well, I need to push myself harder. Your natural reaction to that might be, well, maybe I should eat less. Maybe I'm eating too much, and maybe I'm not training hard enough. So they eat less, they train more. Guess what? This is called low energy availability now. So the balance swings, out of kilter. And also we're surrounded in a world where, unfortunately, there is an obesity epidemic, right? And so this is where the balance is the other way. People are eating surplus. It's true. There are quite a lot that do that. But I suggest that all the people that we're working with, that's not the case. Quite exactly. They're doing a lot of exercise. They need a lot of energy to support that quality exercise we're talking about, including strength exercise. Lots of people don't realize that actually strength exercise needs a lot of energy and it maintains a high metabolic rate even after you stop exercising. So you need to fuel appropriately for this. So if you don't do that, and then you're pushing yourself too much, you think that actually you need to train more, you need to eat less, all this sort of thing, then actually it can backfire. You end up in low energy availability and you could develop REDS. And RED is covers all the symptoms, this whole syndrome of things that you might experience as a consequence. And by the way, one of those is that the body will look to save energy and it will, guess what? Down-regulate your hormones. It's like, hold on a minute. We've just said that as you get older, your hormones start to decline a little bit anyway. So it's going to accentuate. So it's going to backfire, I'm afraid, massively. Maybe not immediately, because immediately you probably will feel buzzing because all your stress hormones will be sky high and your body's like, hey, what's going on here? So you might initially feel good and think, oh, actually, this is working. And so then you're tempted to do more of it. But then ultimately the crash will come, I'm afraid, and it will accentuate the decline in your hormones and you won't get, things can start, you get injured and all this sort of thing. So please don't go along that slippery slope. But doing all the things we've discussed about the training smart, good quality training, the strength training, the good sleep, and specifically on nutrition, please don't cut your carbs. Carbs seems to have a very bad press. It's like, oh gosh, carbs make you fat and all this sort of thing, but that's not true. Complex carbohydrates are the key food group you need for quality fuel and quality exercise. So if you want to do a quality run and get the benefits from it, and you want to do a quality strength training, you will need to fuel beforehand, maybe during as well, right? top up, and afterwards, refueling after exercise with carbs. So don't skimp on your carbs, especially around training. Fuel good quality training. And also overall, as we get older, we need to think about increasing the proportion of protein we're eating, particularly at the meals, because we need to give those building blocks for the muscles and the bones, etc.
Brilliant. Lindsey, have you got any follow-up questions on that low energy availability, or can we shoot across to, I wanted to talk a little bit about HRTs and the sort of get into a bit of that.
No, I think go there because I mean, I think we are scratching the surface of a lot of topics here. And the next kind of step in this direction is moving into the realm of low bone density, etc. And I just don't think we've got time to unpack everything. And I think the points were just super clearly made there. Actually, don't skimp. Be mindful of what you're doing. There's some good strategies in there to counter. So no, I think although Shona doesn't like us calling them HRTs anymore, Brad. So
what should they be called? Let's start there.
Yeah, because as you said that, I was like, damn, what is Shona trying to retrain us to? Instead of calling it hormonal replacement therapy.
Yeah, she wants it MHT. Listen, well, we can go straight. Well, shall I answer that straight away? So let's go straight onto that. Being a female doctor, it's like something we definitely need to talk about. So every single, well, as we've discussed, man and woman, as you get older, your hormones change a bit. So yeah, that's. But the key, one of the big changes for a woman, every single woman, at some point in her life, will experience retirement of her ovaries, which is called menopause. When the ovaries stop producing eggs, so you can't become pregnant anymore, and also they really decline and stop in their production of the key anabolic hormone estradiol and also progesterone. Those go low. And the testosterone also goes low a little bit, a bit lower as well. Women produce some small amount of testosterone from their ovaries. So there is a big sea change there. So that's what menopause is. That's the definition. And so as a consequence, you can experience lots of symptoms as a woman, right? It's a whole Pandora's box, as I discuss in my book called Myths of Menopause. So there's a whole, obviously the periods become irregular, the periods stop. Hot flushes, called vasomotor symptoms. 75% of women will experience this going through perimenopause, menopause. Poor sleep, we mentioned already. Brain fog, random aches pains which are not related to an injury. So there are quite a lot of things that you notice, don't feel so good in that sense. And also there are long-term health consequences. Because you mentioned bone health. Because estrogen is the queen hormone for bone health. There's no two ways about it. That's it. And so 1 in 3 women after menopause are at risk or will develop osteoporosis if you do nothing, by the way. I hasten to say that. And also the increased risk of cardiovascular disease increases to equal that of men. So these are all the consequences of this. But so what can you do about it? There's always, and what do you do? So what do you do about it is everything we've already discussed. Training smart. In looking at your nutrition, not skimping on the carbs, fueling appropriately, increasing protein intake, sleep hydrating strategies. These are all fundamental things that will definitely help. But if your symptoms are really getting you down, you do all of this, but you're still really struggling with hot flushes or brain fog or all these things, then this is where HRT can be helpful. I'm with you. In the UK, I have to say, we still pretty much most people call it HRT, hormone replacement therapy. Those that argue that there's a problem with that name, I do accept, because replacement therapy implies there's a medical condition and you need to replace it, which is not correct. Because menopause is not a medical condition, it's not a disease, it's not an illness, it's a natural physiological process. So, if we really want to look, criticize that thing. But so it has been suggested we call it MHT, menopause hormone therapy. But some of us have a problem also with that, because we sometimes recommend HRT to younger women, premenopausal women who develop REDS. And one of the consequences of REDS is low hormones and poor bone health and stress fractures. And the IOC consensus statement is very, very clear. And I got here in the UK, NICE to change its guidelines. And if a woman has got REDS, her periods stop, her bones are at risk from either a DEXA scan or she's got lots of stress injuries. What do? We give HRT, because HRT is now the primary medication, certainly in the UK, for both the prevention and treatment of poor bone health. So I'm afraid there's not an idea. Well, I do have a solution. We call it female hormone therapy. There you go. That will cover all of it. But anyway, so if you're confused, HRT and MHT, they are fundamentally the same thing. It's a medication which contains some estrogen and some progesterone. You must never take estrogen by itself if you've got a uterus, otherwise the lining will get too thick. So basically it's female hormone therapy, which I will call it. It is the combination of these two hormones to bring your levels roughly up to what we would expect to be in a menstruating woman. We can never get it exactly right because of individual variation, like we've already discussed in hormones, and also the body is amazing. The female hormone choreography is really complex. So we do the best we can. It's very sort of chunky, lumpy. You take some estrogen every day, and you can take the progesterone either in blocks to sort of mimic the cycle, or you take it every day. And that we know will help with symptoms. And that's the primary reason a menopausal woman would take HRT. But we also know, like I've mentioned, that it's also for the primary medication used for poor bone health. And also we know that if women do start taking HRT close to the menopause, then this can also be cardioprotective and reduces all-cause mortality. So there are some, obviously it's every single woman's choice. And this is where it has become fraught with different camps, saying, oh, you don't take HRT, it's dreadful, it's artificial, blah, blah, blah. And others saying, oh, yeah, absolutely, you're stupid if you don't take it. And by the way, while you have to take massive doses. So obviously there's a compromise somewhere in the middle, right? You do all your things that we discussed, the nutrition, the sleep, etc. But then if you need the HRT, that's absolutely fine. And the rule of medicine is you give the lowest possible effective dose. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? You don't give the person massive amount of, I always start very, very low. And let's see how you feel. We'll leave it 3 months, please. I do have lovely masters athletes who say, okay, I'm doing the HRT. And they give me an email 2 days later. I don't feel any different. It's like, no. Hormones take their time. So we leave it 3 months very low. But I tell them this. I say, don't be disappointed. Hopefully you will see some improvements in your sleep, your hot flashes. But if you don't, we've got somewhere to go to. We don't want to charge in there straight away. On the HRT story, I will continue calling it HRT because it just comes off, Anyway, for women who aren't competing, adding in testosterone is specifically for low libido. After you've done the HRT and you've done everything, all the lifestyle, they're still struggling, and that's a problem. Then sure, but if you're competing, obviously it's a no-no. Because testosterone is on the WADA ban list, full stop. So I make that clear to my athletes who come and say, oh, well, my friend is taking testosterone. It's like, yeah, but she's not competing. So you're different, we'll work on other strategies.
Brilliant. Nicky, I wanted to ask you on the male side of things. I mean, you spoke about REDS and low energy deficiency. It's not specific to females. Obviously, it's more prevalent in females, but males do end up there as well. Is there like from a replacement or from hormone replacement, is there anything like or that males should be taking or looking at?
That's a very good question. And you're right. I do see more women. It's more frequent occurrence in women, but I have seen quite a lot of males, runners of all ages, and cyclists as well, male cyclists as well.
Yeah.
So basically, it's all the sports which are against gravity, which is pretty much all of them, including climbing. And by the way, I've seen a lot of those. Anyway, so absolutely, we need to include men in this conversation about REDS of all ages. And actually, it is very interesting that for both men and women with REDS, the fundamental thing is we need to address this energy deficit. So the fundamental thing for both is like let's look at the training. Maybe you're overtraining, so you've got big energy demand. You're not meeting the demand, so let's increase the carbs. So you have to work on all those things for both men and women, no doubt. And if there's a bone element to it, definitely that's even more important to do the strength training. For women, for the bone health, we have the HRT. For men, because from what I've just said, we don't have that card. We cannot give testosterone because it's on the wilder ban list. But also it's a little bit more, I have to say, for men there isn't that equivalent. So we have to work with those fundamental behaviors and balancing those athlete behaviors. And TRT or testosterone replacement therapy, as it's often called. I mean, outside of the REDS thing, there's a lot of talk about, should men over 50 be taking TRT? But I have to say no, because the difference is between women and men is that there's a big, significant drop in, for example, estrogen. At its peak during the menstrual cycle, it can be as high as 1,000 picomoles per litre. After menopause, you're lucky if it's 100, right? But the equivalent in men is the range before 50 is something like, depends which lab you're losing, let's just say 10 to 30 nanomoles per litre, right? And then after 50, the range, it does go lower, but it only drops to maybe 6 or 8 to 28. So there is a shift, but it's not the same degree and magnitude as what we're describing for women. So if there is an absolute genuine medical condition, the testosterone is truly in the boots, in single figures, low, right? And the FSH and LH, sorry, I'm getting a bit technical, are high. In other words, there's the testes have packed in, similar to the ovaries packing in menopause for women. If that is truly a medical condition, and that's the case, then sure, that actually there's a medical indication to give testosterone. Although still it's very complicated. Don't ask me about TUEs. We won't go there. It's really difficult. Yeah. Anyway, so I do want to emphasize for men, I accept it's a little bit tougher with the RED story. I'm afraid testosterone is not an option there. But also for older male athletes, don't think that TRT is your solution. I'm afraid it's not. It's going back to all the fundamentals we discussed earlier.
Brilliant. Lindsey, anything from you before I wrap up?
Yeah, same as Nicky. Let's not get too deep in the weeds there. All cancer risk skyrockets, etc., etc. So we won't dig too deep into. Yeah, lots of topics. Look, this has been great, and lots of these topics. I feel like we scratched the surface, but we went deep enough to really give some effective strategies in dealing with it. So thank you very much. That was awesome. But yeah, I think we may need to
follow up,
create a few branch podcasts to unpack a few topics a little bit more. But that was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Absolutely. We can go so deep on so many of these things, and it is fascinating. So I'm actually going to ask you, if you're listening or watching this and you want us to go deeper on any one of the topics we've spoken about today, I'll pop a link in the description where you can leave your comments, you can ask any questions. We'll take a look at those, and we'll sort of collate them together and see where we go, and definitely get Nicky back on again. Nicky, if people want to find out more about you, I know you are quite active online as well. How can they learn more, find out what you do, that sort of thing? Where can people find you?
Sure. So I have my website. Maybe you could put it in the show notes. The website's called Nicky Keay Fitness. Nicky, Nicky, strange spelling, Keay. So if you Google that, I've got a website where I do blogs. I offer advisory appointments, by the way, so that might be of interest. Details about my books, papers I publish. Basically, it's all the stuff I'm doing, giving talks and things like this, podcasts, etc. So yeah, please check it out. And by the way, guys, thank you so much for a really fascinating discussion. And I'd be delighted to return and delve into any of those things depending on what listeners want. So thank you very much.
Nicky, you're most welcome, and thank you for your time. And I need to publicly apologize. I did mess you around twice. This is the third time, lucky that we are recording this. So, I just want to say sorry about that.
No worries.
Really appreciate you making yourself available for this one. So, yeah, fascinating chat. Absolutely loved it. And we look forward to catching up again soon. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you. Bye.
Bye.